It was the summer of 1945 when 13-year-old Elva and her 11-year-old sister Lila, members of the Skokomish tribe in the Pacific Northwest, disappeared into the dense evergreens beyond their village. They had gone out that morning to gather berries, a simple routine their mother had trusted for years. Welcome back to the channel. This is the host. Today's story is brought to you by our new series, all about legendary creatures. In the Pacific Northwest, life seemed to be returning to normal, but for the small Skokomish tribe in Washington state, a sense of dread lingered. 3 days prior, 2 young girls had vanished. 13-year-old Elva and her 11-year-old sister Lila were close siblings, inseparable most days. They lived with their parents and 3 other siblings in a modest house near the reservation. Now he blamed himself for not going with them that fateful day. Were they kidnapped by outsiders who knew the forest like the back of their hands? Or was there something more sinister at play? Some pointed fingers at James, a troubled young man who had made unwanted advances toward Elva. Before disappearing, he'd moved away, but many believed he'd only fled from the truth. Its roots formed a natural staircase leading down into a small opening. Its roof had caved in, exposing a dirt floor and crumbling walls. But Thomas could make out 2 things. Near the entrance lay a rusted hair clip, hand-beaded with red and turquoise patterns. It was the exact kind Lila loved to wear, and half hidden in the corner were human bones. His heart pounded in his chest. Until next time, remember to stay curious. Kneeling beside the bones, he began to dig them out of the dirt. They were small and fragile, obviously old, yet strangely intact. Holding one in his hands, he felt a sudden surge of recognition, a feeling he hadn't experienced in decades. Closing his eyes, he whispered a prayer to his ancestors, asking for guidance and strength. He hesitated for a moment, surprised by the unfamiliar feeling. Curiosity led him inside. The space was small, barely enough room for a person to stand upright. Then he noticed something. Partially hidden behind a tangle of roots, there was a structure made of cedar planks and brush. It was barely more than a pile of debris, but something compelled Thomas to push aside the branches. As they fell away, revealing the weathered structure within, a chill ran down his spine. Still, no evidence could be found, and James lived the rest of his life believing he was innocent. Over the years, the story of Lila and Elva became tribal legend. It was a constant ache in the hearts of their people. Beside him lay the bones of 2 young girls, their arms and legs broken and filled with dozens of small pebbles. An investigation was launched, but despite the attention, no answers were found. Years later, the coroner revealed that one of the girls had likely suffered broken ribs at some point, possibly from a fall or impact. While there were no signs of foul play, the case remained officially unsolved, another cold case file gathering dust in some government office. He dropped out of high school, enlisted in the army, and shipped out to fight in Korea. For him, the war was personal. He and his family held a traditional potlatch, inviting the entire tribe to remember and honor Lila and Elva. Stories were shared, songs were sung, and the community grieved together. For the first time in almost 50 years, the girls were at the center of everyone's thoughts, not as missing persons, but as sisters, daughters, and beloved members of their community. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the reservation, a sense of peace settled over the land. The mystery of what truly happened to Lila and Elva remained, but their spirits, it seemed, were finally free. Away from the fighting, though, his thoughts always drifted back to Lila and Elva. Not to search for his sisters, for he had long since given up hope of finding them alive, but to finally let go. On a crisp autumn day, he stepped off the bus and onto the reservation. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth. The familiar surroundings brought a rush of memories. As he walked, he stopped at an old logging path. Here, he and his sisters had played countless games. Here they gathered huckleberries, and here they chased each other through the underbrush, their laughter echoing in the woods. A sudden urge came over him to follow the path deeper into the woods. It was overgrown, barely visible, and led to a part of the forest his sisters loved to explore. Their father worked as a logger, their mother as a weaver and washerwoman. Life was humble, but filled with the traditions of their people. He married, had children, and eventually retired from the army. But no matter where he went, the memory of his sisters followed him. He saw their smiling faces in the clouds and heard their laughter in the wind. Sometimes he dreamed of a vast wilderness where sunlight filtered through ancient trees, and his sisters ran ahead of him, their voices echoing in the stillness. Other times he dreamt of a dark place with gnarled branches clawing at the sky and unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Every Saturday, their mother would pack a lunch and send the girls to pick berries in the woods behind their home. She knew the area well. The berries were plentiful, and the clearing where she sent them to gather always felt safe. But this Saturday, their mother would regret that choice. Each episode dives into a myth and explores its origins, meaning, and cultural impact. New episodes premiere every Wednesday. You can watch all 3 episodes right now with a CuriosityStream subscription, and thanks to you for supporting this channel. But what isn't in question is that for weeks, then months, the community searched without success. Lila and Elva's disappearance shook the reservation. Local newspapers covered the story, but little effort was made to find the girls. The Skokomish people felt abandoned, not just by the outside world, but by the very system that should have protected them. Even after 5 months, no arrests had been made, no leads followed, and their parents, now hollowed out by grief, refused to believe their daughters were truly gone. But that day, the girls never returned. No screams, no signs of struggle, just silence. Their parents searched with neighbors, elders, even local authorities. When they didn't, their mother assumed they had simply stayed longer than expected. At first, she waited patiently. Then anxiety turned to worry. By nightfall, she had alerted their father, and the entire neighborhood had joined the search. Men combed the nearby areas while women called the girls' names into the empty woods. Nothing. Night fell, and still there was nothing. With the rising sun, so did their hope. The tribe's spiritual leaders held ceremonies. But after weeks, then months, hope faded. The war had ended, but for one family, a different kind of battle had begun, a fight against the unknown, against time, and against the deep grief that set into the home like mold in the walls. Their older brother, Thomas, was just 15 at the time. He blamed himself for not going with them that day. As the years passed, Thomas left the reservation, served in the military, started a family, and became a quiet man with a haunted heart. The case, long abandoned by the outside world, became tribal legend. Young girls, lost to the forest spirits, some whispered. Others believed something darker had taken them. In 1985, now 55 years old and nearing retirement, Thomas returned to his homeland. Not to search, he'd given up on that, but to finally let go. Yet fate had something else in store. During a walk through a long-forgotten trail his sisters once loved, he stumbled upon a collapsed cedar structure deep in the underbrush. It looked unnatural. Inside, he found a rusted hair clip, hand-beaded with red and turquoise patterns lilas. He remembered it instantly, and then, half buried in the earth, bones. Small, delicate, preserved by layers of moss. He dropped to his knees and wept, not just for the discovery, but for the years lost, the childhood stolen, and the closure denied. Forensics later confirmed they were the sisters. Their remains were found near a decaying hunter's trap. The area, once logged by outsiders, was never part of the official search. No foul play was proven, but the coroner noted broken ribs on one of the girls, likely from a fall or impact. Thomas held a proper ceremony. Not just for Alva and Mila, but for a story buried too long beneath silence, pain, and forgotten land. And in that forest where no one had heard their last cries, their spirits were finally heard. Hello, everyone. In 1945, the United States had just emerged victorious from World War II. The girls left early in the morning, promising to return before dark. Now, the exact date the girls went missing is debated. Some sources say May, others July. Thomas was just 15 when his sisters disappeared. The eldest son, he had always felt responsible for their safety. Back home, whispers swirled about what really happened to the girls. Had they wandered too far and gotten lost? But for Thomas, it was a wound that refused to heal. Decades passed. By the 1980s, Thomas was ready to go home. After walking for about half an hour, Thomas came across a large cedar tree with low-hanging branches. Carefully, he brushed away more debris until the entrance was clear. Standing before him was a small single-room building. When the authorities arrived, they found Thomas kneeling beside a freshly dug grave. For Thomas, though, closure came in the form of a ceremony. This is the host. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help us keep these stories alive, please subscribe and support us through our website,